Most of the videos that I've made for this channel come out of real world projects, and this one is no different. I was working on a project that needed a 5-star rating but no JavaScript. Oh brother, this is gonna be fun. If you're new to the Self Teach Me channel, my name is Amy Dutton. I'm a web designer and developer. If you're just getting into this space, sometimes it's hard to know where to start or what resources to trust. I want to help you level up and get to where you want to be. If this sounds interesting to you, hit the subscribe button below. Let's talk about the logic behind this and what makes this problem a little bit more difficult to solve. Okay, we have 5 stars, and each time we hover over a different star, we need something different to happen. For example, when we hover over the very first empty star, we want the first star to change, showing the filled version of that star. When we hover over the second empty star, we want to show 2 filled stars. You get the idea for 3rd, 4th, and 5th stars. But what also makes this even more challenging is the target area. If that's a new term for you, the target area is the clickable area where something happens. So take the 4th star, for example. The target area is the 4th star, but it should change the area outside its target, changing the first 3 stars to filled stars, but not the 5th. The target area for the 2nd star is here, but it should change the 1st star outside the target area. You see my dilemma. With the exception of the 1st star, each star changes the area outside itself and each star behaves differently. If we could use JavaScript, this would be easy peasy lemon squeezy. We could dynamically change the class name of the parent element based on whatever star we're rolling over. And then from there, we could change which stars are filled. But like I said before, no JavaScript. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to use CodePen. If you've never used CodePen before, it's a coding sandbox. I'm a fan. It's great for experimenting and creating these little code snippets. So everything we're going to do in this video, you can do with the free account. Of course, more dollars equals more features. I'm going to create a new pen, and right out of the gate, I'm going to hide our JavaScript panel since we're doing everything with HTML and CSS. I'm going to start by stubbing out our HTML and building our target areas. So I'm going to create a wrapping div and give it a class name of star wrapper. Inside, I'm going to create 5 links, 1 for each star. And I'm going to use a non-breaking space inside our A tag. And visually within the browser, this is the same as using a space, but instead of making our A tag look empty within our code, we can see that I've actually coded in a space. Yep, and we want 5 of these. 4, 5. And I'm going to give each of our links a class so that we can target and style them. We can't start a class name with a number, so I'm going to spell out our numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we need to figure out how we're going to display and change our stars. So let's talk through this. I thought about using a background image on star wrapper. This won't work. With CSS, you can't style the parent element based on the child. In CSS, there's a sibling selector which will allow us to control items on the same level. Maybe like this. We have the 2nd star, and when we hover over it, we want to change that to the filled version as well as the 1 star. This won't work. The sibling selector is super handy, but you can only affect items listed after. So meaning 2 stars can affect 3 stars, 4 stars, and 5 stars, but not 1 star. We could use a sibling selector, but in a different way. We could put a div that contains our image after the stars, and then use the sibling selector to control which image is displayed. Let's see what this would look like. First, let's add our div at the end that will contain our stars. Next, I'm going to grab my assets out of Figma. I already have images for the 6 different states created, and I'm actually going to group all of these together and export them as a single image. I'm going to head back over to CodePen, and I have a pro CodePen account, so I can put assets on here. If you have a free account, you'll need to find somewhere else online to host your images. I'm going to click on this assets panel. I'm going to drag and drop our stars image onto the modal window. Once it's uploaded, it will appear in the file list below, and I'm going to click on this copy as and select the URL. Okay, let's close our panel and start writing our CSS. So I'm going to start by removing the default margin and padding on our body tag. This will help us when we're trying to get everything lined up just right. Now we want to attach our image to our stars div. This looks a little strange, right? Okay, this will look a little better if we set a width and height on our div, limiting the display. Plus, we need to turn off the repeat. Okay, so I'm gonna say background repeat is none, and let's add a width of 355 pixels and a height of 50 pixels. If you're wondering about the 5 blue dashes at the top, those are links with underlines. So let's style those. First, let's get rid of our blue underline. And next we need to set our target area. And this is the area we can hover over with our mouse and the stars will change. Let's give this a red border just so that we can see what we're doing. And don't worry, I will remove this at the end. We want our link to have a width of 50 pixels and a height of 50 pixels. And you may have noticed that our width and height did not take any effect. By default, a link has a display of inline. If we make this a display of block, then everything will appear on its own line. So instead, let's use a display of inline block, which will have properties of both. It will make it behave like a block, but everything will appear inline. Okay, cool. Okay, now let's add some space so that our boxes line up with our stars image. So I'm gonna say margin right is 20 pixels. Our stars need to appear directly below our link. So the easiest way to do this is to give our stars a position of absolute, especially since we know exactly where it needs to be placed. So left 0, top 0. But remember, position is relative to where the parent is. So here, our parent element is our star wrapper, and it doesn't have any styles, so it's going to position our stars image relative to the entire page. It would be better if we kept everything contained to our star wrapper. So let's give our star wrapper a position of relative. Everything is lined up, but we still have a slight problem. If you roll over the star from the bottom, you'll notice that the cursor turns into a pointer finger, and then as you keep moving up, it changes back to an arrow. So what's going on here? Since our stars div is listed after our A tags, and then we moved it up, it's actually sitting on top of our links. If I give our stars div a background color of yellow, you'll be able to see a little bit better what's going on. If we move our mouse around, it changes to a pointer only when we're hovering over our red border that's peeking out below our star image. So we can change the layering by adding a Z index to our stars class. Now we can see all of our red outlines. So let's remove our yellow background and keep going. Now we just need to specify what happens when the user hovers over a star. So let's start with the first one. I'm gonna jump over to Figma really quick. I think it'll be a little easier to explain here. Okay, I'm gonna draw a rectangle and get rid of the fill and add a stroke. And it's not exact, but the outline represents our stars div. We've given an exact size and placed our stars background image on it. So you can kind of think of it like a window. Then when we hover over the first star, we'll reposition the background image so that it moves up and you see the first star filled. When you hover over the second star, the background image moves up and you see the first 2 stars filled. And the same thing for the third and fourth and fifth. You get the idea. Okay, back in CodePen, let's go to the bottom of our styles. So we'll say when you hover over the first star, and then we can use the sibling selector, which is a tilde, to grab our stars class. And remember, our links and our stars div are all on the same level. They're all next to each other. They're all siblings. It's the only way this works. And we want the background position to be 0, -81 pixels. And the 0 is the X value, so it determines how many pixels away from the left side, and we don't want to change that at all. But we do want to move our image up, so that's a negative value of 81. So let's test this out, and it seems to be working. Okay, so now let's do the same thing for the other stars. Copy and paste, so we'll say for 2 stars, we want this to be -162 pixels. For 3 stars, 4 stars, and 5 stars, we want to use -243, so we're just adding 81 pixels to each of these. doing each. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like we misspelled class. Okay. Now we just need to get rid of our red border. Done. Kind of. Epilogue. Okay, do videos even have epilogues? Epilogue is such a weird word. Epilogue. Blog. Epilogue. Epilogue is a weird word. When I started writing the script out for this video, I thought of another solution, and that's one of the things about coding. There's typically more than one way to do something. When we were looking at this block of code at the beginning of the video, we said that using the sibling selector like this to control individual stars wouldn't work. And it won't. But we could reorder the way the stars are being displayed in HTML so that it will work. And then we can change the order the stars appear within CSS. I'll show you. I'm gonna open a new code pen and start with the same HTML, except this time we don't need the stars div at the bottom. So I don't know about you, but for me that feels a little bit cleaner. So let's start with reordering the stars within HTML. So we want 1 star to be at the end, and 2 stars and 3 stars, 4 stars and 5 stars. Okay. I'm going to jump over to Figma, and this time I'm going to export 2 images, an empty star and a filled star. I'm going to go to CodePen and pull up the Assets panel just like before and upload both of these images. I'm going to copy the URL for the empty SVG, and I'm going to put that as a background for our A tag. And then like before, let's get rid of our blue underline. Give our star a width of 50 pixels and a height of 50 pixels. Make the display inline block, and let's put some spacing between the items with a margin of 20 pixels. Now let's handle our hover state. When we hover over 1 star, we want to change the background image. So I'm going to go back to our Assets panel and say Copy As, and we want to grab our filled star. Let's paste that in. Remember, 1 star is the farthest star on the right. So when I roll over that, it seems to be working. Okay, so let's handle the 2nd star. And say the same thing. When we hover over the 2nd star, we want it to change just like before. Okay, great, but we want the 1st star to be filled too. So we can use our sibling selector again and say 2 stars, hover. Remember, this only works because 1 star is listed after our 2 stars. Now we just need to do the same thing for the remaining stars. 3 stars, and then to grab the 2nd star. Perfect. 4 stars. And 5 stars. Perfect, our stars are behaving. We just need to change the order. So there are several ways that we can do this, but I'm gonna reach for Flexbox. So for our star wrapper, let's add a display of flex, and then we wanna change the direction that these are being displayed in. So we can use the flex direction property, and we'll give it a value of row reverse. This is great, our stars are in the right order. The only problem is that they're now on the right side of the screen. But we can fix that by adding a justify content flex end. That sounds a little funny, but basically with row reverse, it put the flex end on this side instead of the right. Okay, now we're done. After walking through both methods, which way is better? Well, it depends. I know everybody hates that answer, but it's true. I told you that these examples come from real life projects. And in my real life project, this had to go in an HTML email. And email clients are notoriously bad for supporting modern day code. There's a great resource called caniemail.com. I'll include a link in the description below. But with this site, you can type in a property and it will tell you what email clients support which properties. So for us, Flex is supported, but Flex Direction isn't, meaning the first code pin is better for email. With that said, the second option feels cleaner to me. We don't have that weird div at the end that contains the image and also feels a little more stable. Each A tag has its own star and we're not moving the background around, trying to get it to line up just right. So if this was gonna go live on a website, I'd probably use a second code pin that we built. I'll include a link to both of these code pins in the description below. Feel free to grab the code, fork the pin, whatever, it's yours. If you like this video and want to see more videos on web design and development, be sure to hit the subscribe button below. Hit the bell icon to receive notifications when new videos are posted. Until then, keep coding.